Hey there, my name is Craig and I am the Archi-Tech Guy. In this video, we're going to go over how to create a colored floor plan using Photoshop. So all I've done so far is I've opened up a PDF that I've created from Revit. I named my floor plan layer floor plan. So from here, what we want to do is change the blending mode from normal to multiply. And that's just going to make sure that if we have any white pixels on our floor plan layer, that's going to make it transparent so that we can see through it. So in this case, not a big deal, but in other drawings that you might have a lot of white space here, and then if you don't have that on multiply, you won't be able to see the paint colors we're about to create. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a new layer, actually a couple of them, and I'm going to name them based on the spaces that we want to color. So I'll call the first one offices, second one public, and then the last one support. And then I'm going to grab my floor plan layer and drag that to the top. So that just means all our line work is going to be on top of our paint colors in case there's a little bit of overlap that happens. So there's a couple different ways of how you can go about painting. So I'm just going to go through and demonstrate those right away. So we're going to go to this workroom. So I'm going to call that a support space. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my support layer. And then I'm going to choose my paint bucket tool. If that doesn't show up, it might be hidden under the gradient tool. So just long click on there and then choose the paint bucket tool, and there we are. So you'll notice there's a couple checkboxes up here that we want to pay attention to. So there's contiguous and all layers. So contiguous really just means that it's the same color of pixels that are touching, and then all layers, it takes into account all the layers in our document. So in this case, floor plan is going to have all our line work, so it's going to pay attention to that. And then if we have contiguous checked, it's going to color anything that is white on our support layer, which really is empty, so it's just going to paint everything unless we create some boundaries for it. So before I click, I'm going to choose red. And in this case, what it's going to do when I click in this white space, it's going to paint the hallway, the corridor, inside the doorways a little bit, all the way through here. There's a gap there, so it's going to paint the break room and the conference room. But if you notice, it does take into account all the boundaries from the floor plan layer. So in order to stop that from bleeding all over the place, I'm just going to undo that, and I'm going to draw a boundary. Doesn't have to be exact, just something to close off that gap here from the doorway. And then if I paint again, it's just going to keep it contained in this room. If you notice though, it takes into account our room tags, so it's not going to paint inside of that because it's a closed off boundary. So if I want to paint all those, I'm going to have to go in and do that individually. So that's possible, and that's one way to go about doing it. Another way, I'm just going to undo this a couple times, and then I'm going to hit Control D to deselect everything here. So the next way I'm going to do this is I'm going to pay attention to the boundary that I draw. So I'm going to zoom in here and then draw a boundary. If I hold shift, that's going to keep my selection tool to orthogonals or 45-degree increments. And now I'm going to choose my paint bucket tool, and then I can uncheck contiguous and all layers. And if I do that, it's just going to paint everything in my selection tool regardless of any boundaries from the floor plan layer that may have been created. So that's really the other way we can go about doing this. So let's say I want to paint the bathrooms. So I'm just going to draw another box here. Again, I'm holding shift. And then if I double click on my last point, it's going to automatically close that for me. So either I can do that entire box without having either of these checked, or if I check contiguous and all layers, it's still going to keep it in that boundary that I've created but it also is going to pay attention to the floor plan line work. So I painted that, then hit Control D to deselect. So now let's say I want to tone down the opacity of that a little bit. So I'm going to choose that to be 20%. So now let's say I'm not very happy with that red color and I want to change that to blue. I can do that. Just choose the blue color, uncheck contiguous, uncheck all layers. Just make sure I'm on my support layer and paint. And boom, that changes that. I can change it to green super quickly. So if I want to go around and change my colors of the support or public or offices, I can do that pretty easily. And then if I want to delete some of that space, I can go through, just create a layer or create a region around that, make sure I'm on my support layer and hit delete. And I can customize this however I see fit. Alright, so that pretty much does it for how to create a colored floor plan using Photoshop. And check out my other videos, and I'll be checking out some other topics. Alright, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.